Greg Peterson here, and I want to thank you for listening to the Urban Farm Podcast. We wouldn't be able to keep doing these great shows without you. So as a token of my appreciation, I'd like to offer you access to a list of our top 10 episodes I personally find most inspiring. If you enjoy the Urban Farm Podcast but don't have time to listen to every one, then you will love this list. Although all our guests have great information to offer, if you are short on time, these 10 are must-listens. To get access to the top 10 most inspiring podcast episodes, text FARMER to 44222. That's FARMER to 44222. And enjoy listening.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Cory Williams to talk about his experience with tropical and fruit tree gardening. Cory spent 5 years in radio in Flagstaff and 12 years on TV in Phoenix, Arizona as a sports anchor and reporter for channels 12 and 15. He now lives in Chandler, Arizona, owns a video production company called Studio 9 Production. Cory got into farming and gardening after going to Napa Valley, Sonoma, California about 15 years ago and was inspired to start growing grapes. With each move, he has planted more and more at each house, and finally 4 years ago, he and his wife purchased a home on an acre and a half in Chandler, Arizona. As soon as they moved, they started planting. He started by just focusing on gardening and some vines, and then over the last couple years jumped in headfirst into full-fledged tree farming. He now has over 150 trees, vines, and fruiting plants, and he is proud to claim that he planted every single one himself and maintains them all. Cory is happily married, has 4 kids, ages 6, 4, and 2, and just welcomed a brand new baby to their family. Congratulations, and welcome to the show today, Cory.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was quite an introduction there.
Hey, there was a lot of good material to work with. Well, thanks. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Yeah, absolutely. So started 2001. I decided to take a trip out to Napa, Sonoma because I was just very interested in vine farming. Also, I've always loved beer and hops and everything that goes into beer and wine. So I decided to take a trip out to Napa, Sonoma, and went out there during the fall, just actually during the crush period. So when they were taking all the grapes off the vines and crushing them to eventually make wine with. But with all the colors on the grapevines, all the leaves changing color, I never realized just how beautiful grapevines can be, especially in the fall. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. Just all the autumn colors. You always think of autumn in the Midwest with all the different colors on the trees. Really, grapevines look the same way. I mean, they get those really beautiful oranges and auburn and red, and they just pop. And so I spent a week out there and absolutely fell in love with everything, as far as grapevines, and even checked out a couple farms that grew hops and just loved everything about it. So as soon as I got back to Phoenix, it was in my mind, I thought, what, if they can grow it there's got to be a way we can grow grapevines here. And so I went out and bought a couple Merlot grapevines and started started with Merlot grapes. That was 2001, and then lived in that house for a couple years, and then moved to another house out in Gilbert and planted Cabernet and Merlot grapevines out there, and had a lot of success with those. And actually, there's magazine, Arizona Wine and Vines magazine, Vines and Wine magazine, and they changed the name of it now. But a couple years ago, they had a contest. It was actually about 4 years ago now. They had a contest to do a picture from Arizona vine for the cover. And so I just took it at my house, took a picture of one of their bottles of wine, of a bottle of wine in one of my grapevines at my house in Gilbert over in the Seville area, which is far southeast valley. And it ended up winning the contest. And so it got on the cover of the magazine. So that was kind of a fun little thing, and a lot of people, as soon as they saw it, they couldn't believe that the picture was taken in the suburbs of Gilbert, Arizona, on a Merlot grapevine. So had success with the Merlot and the Cabernet grapes there. And then, as you said in the introduction, my wife and I purchased a home. We're on an acre and a half on a county island in Chandler, and purchased that almost 4 years ago now. And as soon as I pretty much moved in, and as soon as we moved in, I started planting grapevines right away. I've got 16 different varieties of grapevines at this point, everything from Merlot, Cabernet, Syrah, the typical Arizona ones that you see, the Thompson, Flame, Chardonnay, even Arizona Canyon grape, which is kind of a unique one that grows up in the canyons of northern Arizona. And a lot of people don't know that there actually is a native northern Arizona wine vine. So I've had great success with all of them. And that's really, as a lot of people talk to me about getting into, growing anything in Arizona, wine or any kind of grapevine, I always tell them is a great way to start because they're low maintenance, they're easy, they tend to yield quite a bit early, so you're not waiting 5 or 6 years, for them to start turning fruit. Yeah. So it's a great way to kind of jump into it. So as I said, right when we moved in, I planted those, and then right away I knew I wanted to start kind of creating some microclimates because our 1.5 acre basically had just a giant grass field and then a large 15-year-old lemon tree. Wow. And then 2 large old male mulberry trees, and that was it on our whole property. So there were no other trees, so it was just wide open. So, which is great. It was a blank canvas, but at the same time, I knew that to grow some of the plants I eventually wanted to grow, I needed to create some microclimates around the yard. Yeah. So I planted a bunch of different citrus, just lemons, limes, pink lemons, ruby red grapefruit, key limes. Just kind of started with some of those peaches, some stone fruit peaches and nectarines, and planted those in kind of in the center right behind our house, so I could kind of create some kind of a microclimate on either side of it. Right. And so planted those right away. Those grew up really quickly. And then about 2 years ago, I started really diving into planting the tropical stuff as some of that started to grow in. And once I got into the tropical stuff, I realized I wanted even more microclimates, and I started really getting into the nut trees. Yeah. And started planting almond trees and pecan trees and some of the trees that can get larger to create some of those shaded areas, for the intense summers that we have here in Phoenix, and to help protect some of the plants. And now I have probably close to 150 different trees on the property that I've planted over the last 3 years. And I don't know if you want me to go through the entire list, but
we'll get there. We'll get there because I've got questions for you, man.
And then it ranges from everything from stuff you would typically find in California all the way down to South America to stuff you would find in Florida, stuff you'd find in Brazil, like coffee beans. I mean, I really tried to just be as unique and vast as I can to just, if I see something that I think is interesting, I try and get it and then try and figure out how to grow it. Nice. And it's a lot of trial and error. And it's as I've gotten more into it in the last year, I found out there's a lot of other people like me who do this type of stuff and, get a little crazy with it where you get obsessed with all the different varieties and everything. But it's been a lot of fun finding the community that there is, and things like the urban farm where you can go and learn more and, learn from other people's mistakes and other people's experiences and really dive all the way into it. It's really been fun learning from other people, but also being able to help other people. Right. I was just over at someone's house this morning helping him, find certain areas of his yard that would work for the certain types of fruits he wants to grow.
Nice. That's one of the things that I really enjoy is that, I learn along the way, but then sharing it is there's a big bonus there. So.
Oh yeah, there's nothing better than, when someone comes over to your yard and you have, like right now, I've this last week, I've had a number of people come over and I'm growing right now like horned melons, which are a really unique vine. And I have literally probably 200 to 300 horned melons up there growing underneath a bunch of my trees. And it all started back in April. I went to Whole Foods and picked up a horned melon, and I thought, I'll bet I could probably get this to grow. And so I took the seeds and took them out underneath a bunch of my tropical trees, and now I have horned melons everywhere. Yeah. So
I want to.
Sometimes it's just as easy as that.
Yeah, exactly. I want to stop you on that one because that is profound. What you just did. People ask me, where do you get seeds? And often, you go at the grocery store. You know, you go to Whole Foods and they have a horned melon, and oh my gosh, I like these seeds. Grow them. It really can be that simple, right?
And absolutely. And I tell people that's the best way to do it, because then you're going and you get to pick out something you've never tried before, and you get to taste it. And then once you've tasted it, you can think, okay, is this juice worth the squeeze? Like, is this something that I want to put the time and, and the water and energy into growing, because it's something that, either I like or my wife likes or my kids like, and like the horned melons are a great example. I mean, my kids and all their friends absolutely love that, because if you never cut open the inside of a horned melon, it's almost like a green slime. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah.
But it tastes similar to, like, kind of has a banana cucumberish taste to it. But yeah, my kids and their friends love it because it's such a unique fruit when you cut it open, and it's got that consistency like a slime or like a Jello,
right?
Which probably doesn't sound real appetizing, but we'll
just call it Jello.
Yeah, there you go. Jello is probably sounds a little better, but yeah, and stuff like that. Once you get to try it, and then you think, this is something that would be fun to try and grow, and then take the seeds from the fruit you ate and try and get it going.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's a great tip for our listeners. So you have mentioned multiple times since we started the recording, microclimate. Can you kind of speak to what that means a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Microclimate, especially in a place here, like in Phoenix, where we can have huge temperature swings, even like right now, is a great example during the winter. At night we can get down to 30 degrees, and then by 2 or 3 in the afternoon, like a day like today, we're up at 65, 70 degrees. So you have these huge temperature swings, and the temperature swings also, if you spread them out from the summer to the winter, the summer you can get up to 115, 120. And in the winters, we can have nights that get down into the 20s, depending on which part of the valley you live in.
Right.
So there's these huge temperature swings, sometimes even within a 24-hour period, but also from summer to winter. And so the microclimates give you protection from those temperature swings and those temperature variations that we see. A microclimate, you plant a large tree that provides shade that will protect the trees or the vines or the plants that you're growing underneath it from that intense summer sun. I also have a very unique microclimate in my yard. We have a basement in our house, and we have a patio that goes out onto our basement, and our basement is probably about 14 feet down.
Wow.
And outside there I have planters going all the way up the stairs that lead you up to the back of our yard.
Oh,
and so
nice.
those planters are a really unique microclimate, because everybody thinks, well, it's crazy more people don't have basements in Arizona because they always stay cool. What they don't realize is that in the winter, it's the opposite of that. The basements always stay warmer.
Yep.
It's not always that they're cool. It's just in the summer they're cooler, in the winter they're warmer. And so that my microclimate in that outdoor area, even if we're at 25 degrees up above, down below in those planters, it always stays about 35 to 40 at the absolute coldest.
Yeah.
Because the ground that's behind those planters helps, keep the warmth in down there. So it really provides a very unique microclimate down there where it never really gets to freezing down there at all. So that's where I keep some of my more, pineapples and coffee beans, stuff like that, passion fruit. I mean, I have a passion fruit vine down there that really grows year round because it never gets cold enough down there to knock it back.
Right. Nice.
Yeah. So and the microclimates, like I said, the shade during the summer is a great thing, but then, it also protects you in these temperatures, like certain microclimates within my yard. At night when it drops down to 30 degrees, I have certain pockets of my yard that may only drop down to 40,
right.
There's like a 10-degree difference because of all the protection from all those plants that are surrounding it.
Yeah.
So the microclimates you kind of think of it as like little pockets in your yard that you can create more protection for your plants, whether it be in the summer where it stays a little cooler or in the winter where it stays a little warmer.
Beautiful. And so another thing you've mentioned multiple times was wine grapes. And so did you get wine grapes? And if so, did you make wine?
I have not made wine yet. It's funny because everybody always asks that. And every time I've been able to get enough grapes off the vines to actually try to make some, we've always moved right as I was getting to the point where I get enough.
Yeah.
So, and now with a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, the kids, they absolutely love going out there and picking the grapes and eating them. So it's hard to, by the time the kids get to them or the birds get to them, at this point, I still haven't had enough that I've grown on the property that I've been able to take them and make wine with it. But that is something I'm planning on doing probably the next 2 to 3 years.
Nice.
And doing kind of like an Arizona blend, I guess, between some of the better grapes that I get, whether it be some of the Merlot or Petit Verdot, Cabernet, the Syrah, so it'd probably be something that I do with a red. Another one that I don't have one yet, but I want to get a Grenache vine or a couple Grenache vines, because I think just from reading about the terrain that they tend to like, it seems like they would do pretty well here in the Phoenix area. Yeah.
Interesting, because that seems to be one of the challenges. I've got Syrah grapes growing out in the backyard, and they do marginally well, whereas my Thompson seedless is a practical weed.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same thing with the grapevines. The microclimates make a huge difference.
Yeah.
The ones that the true wine grapes, and it's funny, you would think, for whatever reason, everybody always thinks the red wine grapes are the ones you can stick right out in the sun. And really it's the opposite. The Chardonnays, those grapevines, I can put those out next to the Thompson seedless and they just go crazy.
Just thrive. Interesting.
But the Cabernet and the Syrah, and it really is. Just because you're buying a grapevine does not mean that grapevine can take the same type of sun, the same type of climate that another grapevine could.
Yeah.
So it really depends from variety to variety. You really kind of have to do some trial and error
and play.
Right out. Yeah, and play with it. And right out in my backyard, I have a Cabernet Sauvignon grapevine that is absolutely flourishing right now. And it just, for some reason, it hasn't decided that it wants to go through its maturation process, and it's still putting out leaves like crazy. But yeah, you put them in certain areas of your yard, and it's amazing how once they get in that spot where you kind of trick them to think that they're in a little different climate, and they just flourish.
And they flourish. Nice. Have you noticed that grapes tend to be smaller than what we find in the grocery store?
Yes, definitely. And I think that a lot of that comes from our intense heat during the summers.
Yeah.
But when it comes to wine grapes, really that's kind of what you want, because the smaller they are, typically the more intense the flavor from the grape is. So when you go to a lot of wine regions, and that was the thing I learned back in 2001 when I went out to Napa Sonoma, is that they talked about how they really try to stress the grapevines, because that creates a more intense grape flavor that then turns into a more intense wine. So when they said that, in my mind, I took that as, well, we have enough stress with our heat that
exactly.
It's kind of built in, so you can kind of plant your grapevines and they automatically get stressed by the heat we have here.
Right.
So they do tend to be smaller. Even the table grapes, the Thompson seedless and the Flame. I mean, there are parts of my yard where I have some of those grapevines where I do get them as large as you can get in the store, but it's more because of the microclimate than it is, the specific grapevine.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the wine grapes, they're very small. For a lot of the people listening to this, if you've ever seen champagne grapes are typically
teeny.
A really small grape.
Yeah.
Yeah, very tiny. And that's usually the grapes that I grow here, as far as the wine grapes, that'll be kind of the average size to a little bigger than that.
Yeah. Cool. All right, on to the rest of your list, or part of the rest of your list. What is a peanut butter fruit?
Peanut butter fruit, it's like a little red orangish berry, and what would it be? Probably the size of like a small plum, I would guess is a good size for it. And when you bite into it, to me, like, they call it peanut butter fruit because it does taste like peanut butter. To me, it tastes like the peanut butter that you would get inside of a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Oh,
it's not. It's a little more creamy than it would be typical of peanut butter. Peanut butter is usually kind of stick to the roof of your mouth.
Yep.
Whereas a peanut butter fruit, it's a little more of a creamy peanut butter taste. But it's a great plant. They fruit like crazy. That's when you've got to find the right microclimate in your yard here in Phoenix. They don't like the super intense sun, so underneath another plant is a great spot to plant one of those. And I have 2 of those here on the property, and they're both doing phenomenal. Just, I had to move one of them a couple times to get it in another spot that it liked, but they're both doing well now.
Nice. A big part of what I love doing, and I can tell you're doing lots of it, is experimenting, and then and sharing it with people. What's the story behind that for you?
I've always been the type of person where I'm driven by people telling me I can't do things. So when someone
Right.
says that I can't do something, that gives me all the more inspiration to absolutely do it. And that was the thing, when I started growing the wine grapes, so many people said, well, those grow in Napa Sonoma, this is such a different climate. You're not going to be able to get those to grow here. And I totally disagreed with that. Because in my mind, it was like, no, because so many of the things they talk about are like what we have here. And, in northern Arizona at that point, northern Arizona wasn't growing the wine grapes. In southern Arizona, they weren't really growing the wine grapes on a commercial level like they are now. And now,
yeah.
you go up to Cottonwood and Sedona and then down south to Sonoyta, and they're growing wine grapes, and producing wines that are standing up to any wines in the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and wine grapes absolutely can grow here. And, with the right care, even here in Phoenix, you can go great grapes, depending on the variety and, how much time you're willing to put into it to find the right microclimate within your yard.
Yeah.
But I've definitely always been inspired by people saying I can't do something. So as I did the wine grapes, and then I started planting, bananas, and everybody's first comment was bananas. Bananas won't grow in Phoenix. Well, yeah, they do. They grow really well here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
So that really kind of started me on my experimentation side of things, where when someone would tell me I couldn't, in my mind it was, no, I should be able to, because in a place like Phoenix, we have the sunshine.
Yeah.
We have the warm temperatures.
Yep.
We typically don't have a whole lot of frost. So really the only thing I need to add is water. And if you're smart about how you're watering your plants, it's not like you have to, water them constantly here in Phoenix, with the proper mulch and the proper microclimates. I keep saying that word, but if you're smart about how you're planting these things, it really doesn't take a whole lot of extra water. And if you're using that little extra water that you're, paying for, at least you're putting it into something that, you're getting fruits or vegetables or whatever you're doing in your gardening out of, and it's not just going to just grass or, whatever. You're not wasting water if it's going to something that your family or your friends can eat.
Yeah. Cool.
So just over the years, just always, really, it's all been trial and error and experimentation on my own part.
Gotta love it.
And I've never really dove into much about, I've never really dove into much about reading about stuff, because Phoenix is so unique that I would find if I'd start reading things and it was, pertaining to the Florida climate or California or growing things in Colorado or, and that's where it's really tough, because just because something works in California or works in Florida or even in Arizona, if something works in Sedona, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work the same way in Phoenix. You have to really use that trial and error and figure out, okay, what are the things I can take from that, but then what are the things that I can add to it here in Phoenix that maybe they can't?
Yeah. Well, and even down the block, I mean, literally, somebody 2 blocks away from you is a different space to grow in.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah. And, depending on what trees are planted around your house or, what trees are not planted around your house, or what kind of use the area you're living on, the place where our house is now 40, 50 years ago was watermelon patches. So this land was actually used for farming 40, 50 years ago. And then as homes started moving in, they just kind of left it, and there's now cows that roam out on it. And, so for 40 years, it didn't have anything growing on it. So all this, it's very fertile, rich soil here because it was farmland at one time, but it had 40 years to, regenerate and get some of the nutrients back into it.
Yeah.
So, even something like that, I mean, if someone's moving into a hard-packed dirt lot, you're going to have a little more work ahead of you, trying to amend the soil and plant some trees to create some microclimates than someone that maybe is moving into a house that was on a former farmland or former land that housed cows or something along those lines.
Yeah. So what have you harvested this year that you've been eating?
This year, man, you name it. Barbados cherries. I've had a number of Barbados cherries. Which
Tell us about those.
They're, Barbados cherries, they are phenomenal for growing here in Phoenix because they can absolutely take our full sun. Mm-hmm. My Barbados cherries trees were flowering throughout the whole summer. And so far, through 2 winters, they haven't been knocked back by the winters at all. Even without covering them, mine have done great. So they are a small cherry, and they're actually, if you ever buy vitamin C supplements, you'll notice that it says acerola as one of the supplements that goes into vitamin C. Well, that is actually the Barbados cherry.
Barbados cherry, yeah.
And it's the highest vitamin C fruit in the world. So depending on what, where you read or whatever, one Barbados cherry can have anywhere from 16 to 60 times the amount of vitamin C as one orange.
Isn't that amazing?
So it's absolutely amazing. And I love the taste of the fruits. They're pretty tart, but when you're eating something that has that much vitamin C and that you grew right there at your house, I mean, I love the taste of them. I know some people think they're a little too tart, but I think they're phenomenal. My kids love them.
Yeah.
And, and once they start producing, the nice thing is in a place like Phoenix, 11 months out of the year, they'll be producing fruit.
I was going to say, they're heavy producers, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and they produce pretty much year-round. I mean, pretty much December is about the only middle of December to middle of January is about the only time we don't really see them flowering or fruiting.
Yeah.
But then, come the end of January, they'll kick right back in. And I've tried to plant kind of throughout my property. That's another thing that I like to do is plant things like that will constantly be producing. So even, when you're in a downtime year where, the spring or the fall, and you may not have, melons producing or stuff in your garden that's producing, at least you've got these trees that are constantly giving you something.
Yeah.
Another one is the Jamaican cherry. That's one my kids absolutely love. And that one produces fruit nonstop, and it produces a ton of fruit.
Jamaican
the
cherry?
Thing is that, yeah, Jamaican cherry. It's a lot of people also call it the strawberry tree because the flowers on it look very similar to strawberry flowers.
Uh-huh.
And it has a number of different names, but the one I kind of have stuck with is Jamaican cherry. It produces a small cherry. I don't know. I would say like the cherry itself is a little smaller than like a penny.
Oh.
But the taste on them is phenomenal. They taste like my kids think they taste like cotton candy.
Oh, nice.
I personally think, and I think they taste kind of like Fruity Pebbles cereal. If you've ever had the Fruity Pebbles cereal, that's what they taste like to me. But I'll pull, just off one tree, I'll pull 10 to 20 cherries off a day right now.
Wow.
And it's been like that for probably 3 or 4 months now.
Yeah.
So, and that's very similar to the Barbados cherry, not as far as the tree goes, but as far as how they produce fruit. It's kind of a year-round fruit producer, and it's such an easy one for the kids to go up and pick off the little cherries, and they love them. And anybody that comes over here, the shape and the look of the tree, it's a very cool-looking tropical tree, and it did great down here in Arizona. I've actually got 3 of them now, and one of them I planted back in May, and it was probably about a foot tall, and now it's about a 9-foot tall tree.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
Yeah, and that's just in 5-6 months.
Yeah.
Some of the other things you'd asked about, other things that we've harvested here: pecans, almonds, mangoes, mulberries, miracle fruit, lots of basil, watermelon, sweet potatoes. Those are all things. Goji berries, of course, all the different citrus. Those are all things that we've been harvesting throughout this year.
Yeah. So you've actually harvested goji berries.
Yes.
Nice. And they're high in antioxidants, I think.
They are one of the highest antioxidant fruits there is, and they're not one of my favorite tasting berries, I would say that, but they're definitely edible. It's not something I am scared to eat or anything, but it's, as far as, my favorites, as far as the taste of fruits, they're not one of my favorites, but I like them, and, they're great to add to smoothies or, if you make fried rice or, whatever stuffing, and they're great to throw in that type of stuff as kind of a compliment. And they're so high in antioxidants, it's a great thing to eat.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. This list of trees, there's got to be 70 different types of trees on this list. It's just amazing. We could literally talk for days.
Yeah.
And what I want to know is, of this list, what is your favorite?
My favorite, man, it's like,
I know.
It's tough. I would say my favorite, the ones that I'm probably the most proud of at this point, are my mamey sapotes. I absolutely love. If you've never tried a mamey sapote fruit, it's incredible. It tastes. Depending on the variety, they can be as large as a football. Honestly, like the size of a football. And when you cut it open, it's typically like a salmon color on the inside. Like a burnt orange or a salmon color, and it has the consistency of an avocado, but it tastes just like, exactly like sweet potato or pumpkin pie. And that's that's doing nothing to it. That's just pulling it, cutting it open, and taking a spoon and just scooping it out. And it does. It tastes just like pumpkin pie or sweet potato pie. And depending on the variety, it can be more of a vanilla or chocolatey flavor to it, is what I found. There are a couple Mamey varieties that I'm not crazy about, there are other varieties that are just phenomenal. And so I have 3 Mamey sapote plants here on the property, all three different varieties. And one of them it was one I had ordered from Florida. I ordered a shipment of just the fruit from Florida last year because I wanted to try some different varieties. And the one that I liked the taste of the best, I planted the seed, and it in May popped up, and now it's about a 4-foot tall tree. Nice. And so that one's a really fun one. Yeah, so the Mameys they're very unique looking tree. Like, if you've never seen Mamey sapote tree, they're so cool looking, just very unique, especially for somewhere like in Phoenix.
Yeah. So I see a theme going on here. So far you've pretty much explained all the fruit you're growing in the shape of candy. So you have all kinds of candy growing out in your yard. Do your kids ever, get candy, or is this your candy forest in the backyard?
That's kind of how, and that's probably why I equate it to candy so much, because that's my kids. It's like that's the first thing they always want to equate the fruit to. As soon as they bite into it, they kind of say, "Oh, this tastes like a jelly bean," or "This tastes, like cotton candy." So, with a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and a 2-month-old, my kids are, they're always out there in the garden with me, and they love watching the trees grow and helping, plant them. And then, my little 2-year-old, every time we go out, she goes, "What's that one?" And so then I'll say, "Oh, that's a Jamaican cherry." And she goes, "Oh, I like Jamaican cherry." And, no matter, or pineapple or whatever it is. And it's great for the kids too, because then they see the process, and, they love going out and grabbing stuff off the trees and running into the house and cutting it open and eating it. Yeah. Just yesterday we went out and cut a watermelon, and between the 3 kids, my 3 oldest, they just devoured that watermelon in no time.
That's got to make you feel great.
That makes it very rewarding.
That's got to make
it does. And it's such a great, even digging the holes for the trees, they love coming out there and digging the holes and, finding worms. And I also do worm composting here. So I've got a tower that I do worms and use the compost to fertilize the trees. Right. And the kids love playing with that, digging out the worms. And it's such a great experience for them to get their hands dirty and be able to jump in the holes and just have fun with it.
Yeah, beautiful. So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
Yeah, well, I always say failure is just a part of learning. Exactly. So as you fail, use it as a point where you can figure out what you did wrong and then how to make it better so you don't do it again. Like I always say, if you drive to work every day and you get a flat tire every day when you go to work, then you probably should take a different route the next time. You don't get a flat tire every day. So, and that's really how I see it, is with the fruit trees. If something doesn't work, figure out why it didn't work and try and do it better the next time. And and one of the things I always tell everybody, whenever you're dealing with anything planting-wise, whether it's planting in a garden or planting fruit trees or anything that you want to plant, just pay attention. So many people think they can just stick the tree in the ground and then once every 3 weeks go out and check on it. Yeah. And if you really want success, that's not going to work. You need to pay attention to what you're doing, pay attention to how you're planting, pay attention to the plant. If the plant needs more water, it'll show you that it needs more water. If it's getting too much water, it'll show you that it's stressed and it's getting too much water. So if you're paying attention to the plants, you usually can catch something before it gets to the point that the plant is dead. Yeah. And so, you can have failures, but you don't have to look at it as your failures being ultimate failures where you're completely losing the trees. It could be, just where you just need to correct it. And then once you've figured out what you did wrong, you can correct it and make the plant thrive. Right. And so a couple of the plants that I've, like coffee beans are kind of a tricky one here in Phoenix. They do not like our heat and they don't like the cold. And so those are ones that I've had struggled with just finding the right locations for those so that they can thrive. And, and the fun thing with coffee is the coffee plants, they'll tell you pretty quickly if they don't like the spot they're in. The leaves will get real crispy, but then if they're in a spot they like, they'll grow like crazy. So, and I mean, you could see a huge difference in a coffee plant even in a week or two, just in growth, or, you know, the leaves get singed and it looks like it's on the doorstep of death.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that's where I would say the failures, it's just, you know, figuring out your yard, figuring out your climate that you're living in, and the microclimates you have, and then making those work. And it's a lot of trial and error. So you will have some failures, you'll have, you know, successes, but the successes you have make all those failures so much more, you know, so much worth it. So that, you know, when you're picking all these Jamaican cherries and Barbados cherries and horn melons and all this fun stuff, you know, when you're out there with your kids, the failures don't even cross your mind, because, you know, you're seeing the success and the fruits of your, like literally the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially when your kids go running out in the backyard, grab food, bring it in and consume it, and just, you know, that's got to just feel great.
Oh yeah. And you know, and that's that's the thing that I think so many people don't understand, you know, whether you're in Phoenix, Arizona, or Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Sacramento, California, or, you know, Omaha, Nebraska, wherever you are, there's a good chance you can grow something there that you can pull in, you know, whether it's during the summer or, you know, if you want to make yourself a little greenhouse. I mean, if you want something to grow bad enough, there's a way to figure out to make it grow, you know? And so like for people that say, oh, I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I could never do a garden. No, you could. There's ways you could do it if you really wanted to, you know. And then we're blessed here in a place like Phoenix where really we can grow stuff year round. And it's amazing how many people don't understand that, because they just think of Phoenix as a desert.
Right.
And, oh, it's a desert, so all you can grow here is cactus and tumbleweeds. And no, you can grow pretty much anything you want to in Phoenix.
That's the cool thing about it here. That's for sure. That is for sure. So what do you consider your biggest success?
Biggest success, I would just say growing the fruit trees has been, like in general, just because, you know, everybody I talked to always talked about gardening and growing, you know, things like lettuce and peppers and all that, which I did for a couple of years right when we moved into this property. And once, you know, I kind of went through all that, and I grew lettuces and peppers and onions and, you know, turmeric and all that kind of stuff. And it was fun, but I wanted a challenge, and I wanted to be able to grow things that I couldn't just go to the store and find. You know, and really as I started doing that, I started finding out that the reason a lot of these fruits and things that I'm growing on the trees here, a lot of the reason that you don't find those in stores is because they can't survive the shipping process, you know, or they have like a 4 or 5 day shelf life.
Yeah.
And once you start growing that type of stuff, you realize, the stuff that doesn't have the long shelf life really in a lot of ways is the stuff that's the healthiest for me.
Yeah.
You know, like the Barbados cherries are a great example, that because they're so high in the vitamin C content, they basically go rotten after about 5 days off the tree.
Right.
You know, and the Jamaican cherries are another example. You know, they're one of the best fruits for controlling blood sugar. And you'll notice if you pull those off the tree for about 3 days after they're off, they're great. And then by day 4, they almost taste like you're eating a little pill of alcohol, because they just totally become like a fermented fruit.
Yeah.
Like by day 4. So, and you start realizing, the reason you can't find all these unique fruits on stands and grocery stores is because they won't survive that long.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then the ones that you will find on grocery stores that you can grow, when you grow them at your house, they'll taste so much better because you're pulling them when they're supposed to be pulled, instead of having to pull them, you know, 2 weeks before they're ripe and then letting them ripen on the store shelf.
Right.
So, and that's where, you know, things like horn melons are a good example. You'll find those at Whole Foods. You know, you'll pay $6 for one of them. Mm-hmm. But when you have one on a vine at your house and you grow it when it's supposed to be picked, or you pick it when it's supposed to be picked, I mean, it just tastes like you can't even compare the difference in taste when something has matured to the point that it's supposed to be picked until, you know, as opposed to one that was picked 2 weeks early.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. So what drives you?
I think it goes back to just, you know, a part of it is definitely the people say you can't, and I say, well, I can. So that's part of it. But I think also just I love being able to, you know, kind of be self-sustaining in growing fruit and growing my own food. And not only that, but just the visually what it looks like, when you've got these huge pecan trees that are losing their leaves in the fall. And, and then in the spring, you've got things like a jacaranda and Royal Poinciana that are putting out these just phenomenal flowers, or a Texas Mountain Laurel that has, the flowers that smell like grape candy, or, then I go back to the candy thing. But, just all these, it's just such a rewarding experience, just, day after day and week after week and month after month. It's not something that's just, you spend one day on it and you get that small victory and then it's over with. It's something that is kind of a continuous victory, where, every time you're going outside and, there's something else blooming or something else fruiting, you're constantly seeing the fruits of your labor and being rewarded for the time and work you put into it. Yeah. So I would say that's kind of what drives me at this point, is it's just the overall experience is just, it's so rewarding and just so fulfilling to be able to dive into it and, have fun with it, and try fruits that you've never tried and experience things that you've never experienced, with the different growing of trees and fruits and vines and everything else. I mean, it's such a rewarding experience that I think people don't understand until you start growing it. As soon that's the one warning I would tell people: be careful, because as soon as you start planting one thing, you have some success. It's going to make you want to start growing more and more and more, and you'll just keep going and going.
Yeah, my biggest challenge here at the urban farm is I don't have enough land. I have a third of an acre. Yeah, and it's like, man, I wish I had twice that or three times that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's in some ways your only limitations are on the size of the plot of land you have. But at the same time, I mean, I've been to people's houses that had small yards, and they would do almost like they dug down for a trampoline, but then they did tiered planting, to make the most out of their yard. So just because you are limited to space doesn't mean you can't get creative and figure out ways to make that space work for you.
Perfect. So we haven't talked about your wife and how she feels about this. What's her feelings about all of this hobby of yours?
My wife. She's awesome. She lets me just kind of be the mad scientist with all that stuff. So I go out and I think she's kind of been shocked by how much we've been able to grow. And there's been plenty of times where she's kind of looked at me kind of with a sly smile, like, "Are you sure you're gonna be able to get that one to grow?" Or like when we got the horned melons from Whole Foods that day, and I said, "I think I could get these to grow." And she kind of laughed at me, and then here we are, 5 months later, we have horned melons everywhere outside. Yeah. So, but yeah, and she loves the fact too that, just for our kids, I mean, it's giving them this experience to be out there in the garden and helping the, nutritional aspect, where they're not just, eating chips all day. It gives them a way to get excited about healthy food and foods they should be eating, and concentrating on the types of foods that, hopefully eventually they'll want to grow. Yeah. And, when my kids go to the grocery store and, there's samples of fruit, and, I'll give a sample of an apple, and my kids turn around and go, "Oh, this apple, this is horrible compared to the ones we have at our house." And so they're seeing the difference, from the stuff when you grow it on your own and you're controlling, what you're putting into the fruits, and you can keep them as organic as possible. And so, I mean, on that aspect, my wife loves what we're doing here, just because, it's natural, and we're, trying to maintain all of our health and also our sanity. When you have 4 kids under the age of 6, exactly. It's a nice release for me to be able to get outside and, get out of the house where kids are just running around like crazy. So, plus when they get outside, it gets some of their energy out. So it's nice for my wife to get a break when I take them outside with me, and they're out climbing trees and picking fruits. And and that's a great thing. I've got my own citrus pickers here at the house, so I just send them out with a bag, and they'll spend an hour picking lemons or limes or whatever. So it's a great little release for them.
Nice. So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
Advice is, I get that question a lot from people that, say, well, how have you had so much success? Or, how have you gotten so much to grow, or so many varieties to grow? And I tell everybody, just pay attention. It's not rocket science. It's, if you just pay attention to what you're doing, before you plant, find the right spot for that plant, kind of read up on the plant and find out what kind of climate it likes, or can it take full sun? And just because something says it can take full sun, make sure it's not saying it can take full sun in Florida, because full sun in Florida is different than full sun in Arizona.
Yeah, exactly.
So, And then once you do plant it, and something I tell people too all the time, when you go buy a plant from a nursery or wherever, and you bring it to your house, set it in the location that you think it would do well, and keep it there for a week or two, and just see how the leaves respond to that spot.
Yeah.
If you start noticing the leaves are getting crispy right away, that's probably not going to be the perfect spot for it. Or you may have to look at getting some shade cloth for it for the first couple of years. And a lot of times with a lot of the tropical plants, if you give them shade the first 2 or 3 years, it doesn't have to be crazy shade, just shade from another tree, or you can buy some, 30 or 40% shade cloth and stick it over the top of it.
Yeah.
But typically the tropical plants will grow into being able to take our intense sun.
Yeah.
But you have to protect them for a few years. And so, I tell people, just if that's the spot you really want it, just be prepared for a little work, putting up shade cloths or putting up some frost cloth for the first couple of years as you're trying to get it acclimated to our climate.
Uh-huh.
But as long as you're just paying attention to your plants, you'll know right away, okay, something's not right. The leaves are curling, in. Okay, so that, you may be watering it too much, or, my leaves are getting crispy around the edges. Okay, you may not be watering it enough.
Yeah.
Just pay attention. And there's with the internet and everything now, there's so much information out there, and anytime you're having any kind of issues, like if your leaves are getting crispy, go on Google and say, leaves are crispy on my lime tree, and there's usually a ton of people that have advice on why your leaves may be crispy. And not to say that it's good advice, but usually if you're reading through it, you may find something that, strikes a nerve where it's, oh yeah, that's exactly like my tree,
right.
Or you may see a picture and say, oh, that looks exactly like my tree does right now. So if you're just paying attention to what you're doing, when you're planting them, pay attention to the soil. And if you're just sticking it in rock hard dirt, that's not giving that tree the best chance to survive.
Yeah.
Amend your soil, and feed your trees. I think a lot of people think they can just pop a tree in the ground and then just come back and check on it 2 or 3 years, as long as they're watering it, it's okay. Well, trees are a lot like people. They need to eat. So, make sure you're giving it the nutrients that it needs. And, whether that's through mulch or worm castings, or, if you want to go to the store and buy fertilizers, whatever it is, just make sure you're giving that tree what it needs to survive. And if you're just paying attention to it, you're going to start to understand what it needs and what it doesn't need, and what it likes and what it doesn't like. And so really just paying attention can go a long way.
Beautiful. Beautiful. My favorite quote of yours today: is it worth the squeeze?
Yes, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And that's I tell people that all the time. Like, before you dive into, I've talked to a couple people that, planted a whole bunch of pomegranates, and then they ended up not liking pomegranates.
Yep.
And or jujubes is another one. A lot of people love the look of the jujube tree, and then they plant it and they try it and they realize, I don't really like this fruit.
Yeah.
So I always try to plant stuff on my property that, the juice is worth the squeeze. The time I'm putting into it is the fruit that's coming off of it going to be something that I want to, enjoy.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Cory. It has been a treat getting to chat with you.
Oh, absolutely, Greg. Thank you so much. And, I wish everybody the best of luck. And, everybody, share your stories, share your experiences, share your failures. Everybody is here. That's one thing I've noticed about the community of everybody that's in, whether it be gardening or tree farming or whatever it is. It's a community that loves to help and see other people succeed.
Absolutely.
Which is an awesome thing for, especially society as it is today. It's nice and refreshing to have a community that wants everybody to succeed.
Yeah. Beautifully said. So how can our listeners get a hold of you?
One of the best ways is Facebook page. I have a Facebook page at Tropics of AZ. So you just go to Facebook and at Tropics of AZ, and you'll find the Facebook page, and there's pictures of the various trees I have growing throughout the property here. I think I've got a couple pictures of a couple of mamey sapotes up there, and then I'm constantly updating it with information about stuff that we're harvesting right now, and the Jamaican cherries. I think I just put something up there a couple of days ago about Jamaican cherries, so you can see what they look like. And I use it as a way to kind of let people know, okay, you can have success here, and here's what the success looks like in Chandler, Arizona, and here's what you can expect from this kind of a tree. So just so people can see what a tree looks like, what the fruit looks like, and then maybe help them understand a little bit by the pictures that I show, like, oh, okay, well, that's the microclimate he has it growing in, so maybe I can recreate that here in my yard.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you. And you can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/tropics of AZ. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Greg Peterson here, and I want to thank you for listening to the Urban Farm Podcast. We wouldn't be able to keep doing these great shows without you. So as a token of my appreciation, I'd like to offer you access to a list of our top 10 episodes I personally find most inspiring. If you enjoy the Urban Farm Podcast but don't have time to listen to every one, then you will love this list. Although all our guests have great information to offer, if you are short on time, these 10 are must-listens. To get access to the top 10 most inspiring podcast episodes, text FARMER to 44222. That's FARMER to 44222. And enjoy listening.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.